SIL tried to sabotage me at my husband's party after we announced my pregnancy, but it backfired horribly. Now she's facing jail time and getting divorced. Hello everyone. I, 29F, have been married to my husband Harry for the past 7 years. I love everything about our marriage, except for the fact that he's related to his sister Kayla, who brings nothing but negativity into our lives. Now don't get me wrong, I used to love Kayla when I first got to know her, but over time, my opinion of her changed drastically. She's incredibly negative, manipulative, and toxic. For years I worked hard to avoid getting on her bad side because I knew exactly the kind of person she was. In the past, my husband had dated Kayla's best friend when he was 17. They later broke up because he felt pressured into the relationship, thanks to Kayla. When he turned 23 and found himself single again, his sister insisted he date another one of her friends. He refused, and they had a huge fight. Kayla even went crying to their parents, claiming she wanted him to marry someone she felt comfortable with. But thankfully, his parents didn't listen to her. When Harry and I met and fell in love, his parents were very supportive. But Kayla? She consistently treated me with a cold demeanor. Whenever I was around, she'd bring up Harry's exes for no reason, telling him how well they were doing and how he should get back in touch with them. This went on for a while, and it wasn't just me who found it weird. Harry did too. He'd ask her to stop bringing up his exes, but Kayla would get pissed and start taunting me, saying I was jealous and that Harry shouldn't be with someone as insecure as me. Whenever his parents invited us for dinner, Kayla would purposely bring one of Harry's exes, claiming she'd stumbled into them that day and felt obligated to invite them out of politeness. She also relentlessly checked my Instagram, even though she doesn't follow me. Since my account is public, I'd noticed she was always the first to view my stories. If a guy commented on my photos, she'd run to Harry, complaining about how I was posting inappropriate pictures. Harry and I would just laugh at her accusations. When Harry and I decided to move in together, Kayla urged him to break up with me, saying I had too many flaws as a woman and that she could find someone much, much better for him. Honestly, that comment hurt. I'd always been nothing but nice to her, despite her behavior. Unfortunately, as soon as Harry and I got engaged, Kayla's behavior got even worse. When we announced our engagement, everyone congratulated us, except Kayla. She was eerily quiet, then got up and walked out of the party, leaving everyone shocked. Later, she called Harry, crying and screaming about how she didn't appreciate being told the news with everyone else. She thought she deserved to be the first to know since she was the closest to him. She then sent me a message that was almost borderline threatening, saying I should be a good wife to her brother because she had always been the only woman in his life. The message was so weird, it made me cringe. I didn't even bother replying, which I'm sure pissed her off even more. From then on, Kayla started ignoring me whenever she saw me, but for some reason, she remained involved in all the wedding activities, like when I went dress shopping and had my bridal shower. She took her criticism to a whole new level, openly expressing her discontent with my choices. Even after my future mother-in-law and fiancé called her out multiple times, her behavior persisted. One day, while discussing centerpieces with my future mother-in-law, Kayla overheard and immediately began mocking me, saying my choice had no class, and that this was why she wanted her brother to marry someone better. That was the breaking point for me. I screamed at her, saying I couldn't tolerate her constant taunts and criticisms anymore. I made it clear she wasn't invited to our wedding. Kayla was shocked, gasping in disbelief, as if she'd never expected me to stand up to her. Even my mother-in-law was furious and supported me. Later, Kayla reached out to Harry, complaining about how I'd embarrassed her and insisting he should control me since I was going to be his wife. Harry firmly told her he stood by my decision and that if she didn't apologize, she wouldn't be invited to the wedding. Begrudgingly, she sent me a heartfelt apology, which I left unread. I was exhausted with wedding preparations and didn't want to deal with her drama. In the end, she did come to our wedding because I didn't want her to badmouth us later. Our wedding had a theme of pink hues and pastels, which everyone followed, except Kayla. She showed up in a black floor-length gown with a veil, as if she was attending a funeral. We were shocked, to say the least. She went around telling everyone she was mourning the loss of her brother to another woman. During the reception, Harry noticed how uncomfortable I was and confronted her. She tried playing the victim, saying she had the right to wear whatever she wanted and that I was too controlling. In the end, Harry and his parents asked her to leave when she wouldn't stop making a scene. It was humiliating. Ever since that day, I've steered clear of her. When I gave birth to our son Nate, I refused to let Kayla anywhere near him. She tried to fight it, but Harry and his parents had my back. They understood why I didn't want her near our baby and respected my decision. 2 years ago, Kayla had a miscarriage with her then-boyfriend Jamie. It completely broke her, and it was indeed a sad time for everyone. Harry and I felt for her, especially since we already had a child. So after her miscarriage, we decided to be more forgiving. We'd invite her over so she could bond with Nate. Surprisingly, she was sweet to him, at first, but over time she reverted to her old self. She'd constantly complain about how tough her life was, blaming ex-bosses or ex-friends for her problems. I noticed that in her mind, she's never wrong. She rarely admits fault and always plays the victim to get people on her side. This year, she decided to get married and invited everyone, except us. Harry was shocked, especially since our relationship seemed better. When we questioned her, she said she couldn't allow me to come because I might upstage her wedding. I called her, asking why she'd think that when I'd never done anything to her. She admitted she'd purposely worn black to our wedding and was afraid I'd do the same to hers. I was furious at how manipulative she was and told Harry everything. He talked to his parents, and they decided they wouldn't pay for her wedding or attend. This reduced Kayla to tears, and she started blaming me for the whole mess. Harry told her she'd shamelessly admitted her own mistake and had no right to point fingers at me. But Kayla justified her actions, saying our wedding was a long time ago and that I should get over it. Later, since Phil and Mill were still refusing to pay for her wedding, Kayla reached out to apologize to me and beg for forgiveness. I hate to admit this, but Kayla can be very sweet and persuasive when she wants something. I forgave her, wanting to just move on from the past. Her wedding with Jamie went well. We all attended and had a good time. Not even 6 months later, Kayla was at our doorstep, complaining about how her marriage was falling apart. Harry and I let her stay with us for a few days, where she vented for hours about her husband. They seemed to be having issues with getting pregnant, and Kayla was clearly blaming Jamie for everything. I tried to talk to her, but she was adamant that it was all her husband's fault. When she wasn't complaining about Jamie, she'd hyper-focus on our lives, making up things that didn't exist. For example, I usually go to the gym every morning before work. Sometimes, when I'm running late, I take my work clothes with me so I can finish my workout, shower, and change at the gym. Kayla noticed this and started asking a lot of questions, like why I was showering at the gym or why I even needed to go. I didn't think much of it and explained that I liked maintaining my weight and didn't want to go to the office sweaty. She'd purse her lips and nod, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. Eventually, things seemed to improve between Kayla and Jamie, and she moved back in with him. One weekend, Harry and I went to have lunch with Mill and Phil. Kayla and Jamie were also invited. We left our son, Nate, with a babysitter, since he usually got bored during long adult conversations and preferred staying home to play. During lunch, Mill was telling us about a friend who had recently gotten divorced. She explained how the friend's husband had cheated, so she left him and took half his assets. Out of nowhere, Kayla interrupted and asked Harry if we had signed a prenup before getting married. We all stopped eating to look at her. She acted like I wasn't even there, staring at Harry expectantly. Now, my husband isn't one to mince words. He told her straight up that since we both earned well, we saw no reason for a prenup. Kayla snorted and started going on about how there are a lot of cheaters around and how Harry could be blindsided any day. I took offense and asked her what exactly she was insinuating. Without hesitation, Kayla claimed I was definitely meeting someone since I was always carrying a change of clothes. She said it was her duty as Harry's sister to warn him. I was shocked. Phil and Mill immediately jumped in, telling her to stop making up stories and to mind her own business. But Kayla, without missing a beat, doubled down. She joked about whether Nate was really Harry's son since he didn't look exactly like him. I swear, I watched Harry's face turn red with anger. I've never seen him so furious. He looked Kayla straight in the eye and told her this was why she wasn't a mother yet, because she didn't deserve to be one. He said her child was better off in heaven than with someone like her. Kayla's mouth hung open in shock. Mill and Phil just sat quietly as Harry went off on her, calling her shameless and accusing her of trying to ruin everything because she had nothing good going on in her life. He said she was a loser who did nothing all day while he worked hard to provide for his family. Instead of pointing fingers at me and asking about prenups, Harry said she should worry about her own marriage since she was clearly projecting. Kayla was reduced to tears, sobbing as she looked at Jamie for support, but he just sat there, silent. I've never seen Harry lose his temper like that. Eventually, Kayla got up and ran to the bathroom. Harry was still fuming, and Mill came over to calm him down. I rubbed his hand, and he apologized to me for what his sister had said about Nate. I nodded, understanding how frustrating she could be. Honestly, I was glad he stood up for me so publicly. I'd taken enough from Kayla over the years. After he calmed down, Harry apologized to Jamie, but completely ignored Kayla. We went no contact with her after that day. Her behavior wasn't just affecting me, it was affecting Harry too. We blocked her everywhere so she couldn't reach out. Mill and Phil later talked to us about the incident and agreed Kayla had gone too far. They could see how their usually calm son had snapped after she kept pushing him. It's been a year since we last spoke to Kayla, and everything has been going smoothly. 2 months ago, I found out I was pregnant. It was a complete surprise since we weren't even trying. Harry and I feel blessed to welcome another family member. We waited for the right time to share the news and decided to announce it at Harry's birthday party. Mill and Phil wanted to celebrate Harry, so they threw a big bash in their backyard. Close family and friends were invited. Kayla must have heard about it from someone because she showed up uninvited. Harry and I were shocked to see her. She hugged Harry, telling him how much she missed him and how sorry she was for their last conversation. Harry took my hand and told her she should be apologizing to me since she had questioned my character. Kayla nodded, turned to me, and apologized. She said she'd been going to therapy for the past few months and realized how wrong it was to humiliate me like that. I didn't believe a word she was saying, but I didn't want to be rude in front of everyone, so I just nodded. Mill and Phil checked in with us, assuring us they had no idea Kayla would show up. They said if we weren't comfortable, they'd kick her out since it was Harry's party. But Harry didn't want to make a scene, so we agreed to let it go. Throughout the party, I noticed Kayla laughing and mingling with everyone, which felt odd. She seemed overly positive, completely out of character for her. But since she mentioned therapy, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. When it came time to cut the cake, Harry gave a heartwarming speech about how he considered himself the luckiest guy in the world, grateful for yet another year with a wife like me. His words made me blush with joy. I couldn't help but appreciate the fact that my husband and I were still deeply in love, just as we were when we first started dating all those years ago. Then Harry and I decided to share some exciting news with everyone. With smiles on our faces, we announced that we were expecting a baby. Everyone took a moment to process before exclaiming in happiness. My mother started to cry and came over to hug me, while Phil had tears running down his face as he congratulated both me and Harry. Everyone was so happy for us, excitedly asking if we'd come up with baby names yet. The only sore thumb that stuck out was Kayla. She looked stunned. I thought maybe she was taking some time to process, but then her expression changed, and she just walked away, looking pissed. I was a bit worried, thinking she might ruin yet another celebration for us, but I got distracted as other people came over to talk to me. When it was time to serve lunch, I got up to help my in-laws bring the food out. But Rick and my parents urged me to remain seated, telling me I shouldn't even lift a finger during this time. I was sitting in my seat, patiently waiting for Harry to bring me a plate, when Kayla came up to me, beaming. She had a plate of food in her hands and handed it to me, loudly announcing that she personally wanted to serve me food since she was so happy about my pregnancy. As she handed me the plate, she even made a comment about how she wanted to make it up to me for all the times she'd been rude in the past. I nodded and graciously accepted. She then walked away. As I was about to dig in, I thankfully noticed that she had brought shrimp on my plate. It's a well-known fact to my family that I'm highly allergic to shrimp, so I was shocked that Kayla had served me this. I shook my head in disappointment and got up to get my own food. At that moment, Jamie came over to congratulate me on my pregnancy. We talked a bit and he asked why I wasn't eating. I pointed out how Kayla had served me shrimp, probably by mistake. Jamie told me not to worry and took the plate off my hands. He said he could have it since he liked shrimp and I could get a new plate for myself. I smiled, nodded, and walked away. It wasn't even 5 minutes later when Jamie started to vomit and retch over the plate. Everyone stopped eating in concern and stared at him as he stumbled to get up from his seat. Harry and Kayla rushed toward him in concern. Jamie pointed at his plate and then at his throat. Our eyes widened in shock as we realized something was clearly wrong with him because of what he'd eaten. Jamie then fainted, and everyone gasped in shock and concern. Kayla rushed over to check his plate, and her eyes widened in horror. She turned to look at me and asked if I had given my plate to her husband. I nodded. In the midst of the chaos, someone called for an ambulance, and Jamie was rushed to the hospital. Kayla was crying uncontrollably through all of this, and kept glancing at me in anger. We were later informed that Jamie had been poisoned. I almost fainted when I heard this, because I knew, unlike everyone else, that the plate was originally meant for me. Whatever poison was on that plate could have poisoned me and my baby. Harry, Mill, Phil, and my parents had no idea about this yet. The police were called to take the food Jamie ate as evidence, as no one had any idea what was in the food that had caused him to faint. At this moment, as I'm typing this, Jamie is still recovering in the hospital, while Kayla stayed with him overnight. Harry and I have been answering calls from relatives, inquiring about what happened to Jamie and who could have potentially poisoned him. Mill and Phil are shaken up by what happened and are staying over at our place since they're afraid to be back at theirs. No one has any idea about what happened, especially when everything was going so well. I'm terrified to tell everyone that the plate originally belonged to me and how Kayla had served it to me. If this turns into an investigation, I'll have to tell the police the truth. I feel extremely guilty about what happened. But most importantly, I'm now extremely worried about what Kayla is capable of. She clearly has no inhibitions about trying to poison me. I don't want to be around her, nor can I let my children anywhere near her. Hello everyone. To keep this video going, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and helps us continue bringing you great stories. So if you enjoy our content, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support makes a huge difference. Alright, let's keep going. Update 1. Wow, thank you for the thousands of comments on this post in just a matter of hours. I never imagined I'd get this many responses. My hands were shaking when I typed this earlier, and I haven't been able to sleep. Despite what everyone keeps saying, I do feel somewhat responsible for Jamie's incident. I should have just thrown the plate away, but I don't know why I let him take it from me. I keep crying, thinking about what could have happened to him. Harry knows something is wrong and has been hovering near me. He thinks I'm just worried, but has no idea what I know about his sister. I agree with the comments that I need to sit down and talk to everyone calmly. I don't know if everyone is going to believe me, but Mill and Phil do have security cameras installed all around their house. Since the birthday party was in their backyard, I'm sure they can check the footage and verify that Kayla was the one who offered me that plate. I'll talk to everyone tonight and then update. Update 2. We talked, and I'm so grateful to have the best in-laws in the world. Since Mill and Phil are already staying with us, I sat down with them and Harry during dinner to tell them I had something important to discuss. I started by taking a deep breath, the weight of the situation heavy on my shoulders. With everyone gathered around, I recounted the events of the birthday party, explaining how Kayla had served me a plate with shrimp and how Jamie had unknowingly eaten it, resulting in his poisoning. As I spoke, the shock and disbelief on their faces mirrored my own feelings. Mill and Phil exchanged glances, their concern evident, while Harry's expression shifted from confusion to anger. I continued, expressing my fear about Kayla's motives and her previous attempts to harm me. I admitted my hesitation in sharing this information, fearing the potential consequences for myself and our unborn child. Mill, being the pragmatic woman she is, immediately suggested checking the security camera footage. Phil nodded in agreement, recognizing the severity of the situation. Harry, though visibly upset, remained silent, absorbing the shocking revelation. After reviewing the security footage from their camera app, the truth was undeniable. The footage showed SIL offering me the poisoned plate and the subsequent events leading to Jamie's distress. The weight of the evidence left no room for doubt. Emotions ran high as the realization set in. Harry, now fully aware of his sister's malicious intent, struggled to contain his anger. Mill and Phil were appalled by their daughter's actions, shocked at the lengths she had gone to create chaos. We sat stunned in silence, struggling to understand why she would do something like this. In the aftermath of this revelation, my in-laws decided to hand over the evidence to the police, as this was a very serious matter. Phil and my husband planned to meet with Jamie once he recovered, since he was the one who needed to press charges against SIL. I had no idea how Jamie would react, and I wanted to cry every time I thought about how I had allowed him to take my plate, unknowingly poisoning him. I couldn't sleep or eat properly, consumed by worry for him. I promised to update everyone when something significant happened. Update 3. Okay guys, I'm finally back with an update. I know it's been a month since my last post, but I'm a pregnant woman going through a lot right now. First things first, my in-laws gave the recording to the police, and after reviewing the evidence, SIL was arrested. She didn't even deny the charges, immediately bursting into tears and admitting to everything. My husband talked to Jamie about what had happened, and Jamie was as shocked as the rest of us. My husband urged him to press charges against his sister, emphasizing how sinister her actions were. He assured Jamie that, regardless of his decision, he would always be a part of our family. In the end, after Jamie recovered, he not only decided to press charges, but also filed for divorce. SIL called Mill and Phil, crying and begging for forgiveness. It turns out, SIL is also pregnant. She tried to manipulate them, pleading for bail and claiming they should do it for the sake of their grandchild. Phil firmly told her they were done coddling her and that it was time she took responsibility for her actions. Mill, though heartbroken over her daughter's downfall, understood that what SIL had done couldn't simply be forgiven. The police found evidence that SIL had tampered with the food, intending to harm me. However, her plan backfired, and her husband ended up being the one hurt. She's been charged with multiple offenses, including tampering with food, endangering life, and causing harm. She's been begging Jamie not to press charges, blaming me for everything. But thankfully, Jamie's mind is set. Her court hearing will start soon, and I don't think she'll escape this time. Meanwhile, for everyone asking, my son and I are doing okay. He has no idea about what his aunt has done. Harry and I have talked, and we plan to sit down with him to explain the truth. We want him to be aware of such situations, even though it's going to be a difficult conversation to have with a little one. As for my pregnancy, I'm going for regular ultrasound scans every 2 weeks, as advised by my doctor. We've decided not to find out the baby's gender. We want it to be a surprise. My parents know about what happened with SIL and have become very protective of me. They're worried this might affect my psychological well-being during the pregnancy, so they've encouraged me to go to therapy. I agree with them because, despite acting normally, I've developed a deep-rooted fear after what SIL did to my food. I'm now afraid of eating anything I haven't prepared myself. My husband understands my fear and is there for me every step of the way. Hopefully, I can overcome this irrational fear soon. Update 4. It's been 8 months since my last update. SIL is currently serving time in prison after being found guilty of the charges. I never attended her court proceedings, but my in-laws did, and they told me how SIL admitted to the court that she had been jealous of me for years. She never wanted an outsider to marry her brother and had always dreamed of one of her best friends marrying Harry instead. When he started dating me, she began bullying me. When we announced our pregnancy at Harry's birthday party, SIL was filled with jealousy. She had been planning to announce her own pregnancy that day, having previously suffered a miscarriage. She wanted to share her good news, but felt we had stolen her moment. According to her, her pregnancy hormones drove her to mix a small amount of rat poison into my food. She claimed she only wanted me to end up in the hospital, never intending to physically harm me or the baby. She never expected I would give my plate to her husband, resulting in his poisoning. She argued that she deserved a lighter sentence because of this. Of course, the judge didn't buy her pleas, and she was sentenced to prison. She'll be away from our lives for quite some time. Jamie has successfully divorced her and is finally free. We've met with him over the months and continue to include him in our family activities whenever we can. He and I have talked, and I've apologized profusely for giving him my plate. He assured me it was never my fault. I started crying when he said that because I had been replaying the moment in my head, wishing I could have done things differently so he'd never been poisoned. I'm glad Jamie is doing okay now. As for me and Harry, we've welcomed a baby girl into our family. Despite the lingering shadows of the past, the presence of our daughter has brought warmth and light into our lives. Our son, Nate, is ecstatic about becoming a big brother and has been showering his little sister with affection. Watching our children bond fills our hearts with gratitude. Throughout all of this, my parents and in-laws have been there for us, helping us navigate this new chapter in our lives.